Welcome to the weekend. My name is Brian, and you are watching the One Up Club right here on YouTube. And possibly, if we do it in podcast form later, you won't be watching unless you have some sort of a weird sensory thing. Then you'll be listening. Either way, my name is Brian, and joining me on the line right now is Ryan Hamner of GameBlock.com. What's going on, Ryan?
What's up, man? We're working late tonight.
Yeah, I'm fantastic. It was a busy day at
It
E3.
was.
You had Microsoft go earlier in the day, and then you had Bethesda, which just finished up. Devolver Studios is actually going to be happening right now as we speak. I figured I'd catch it later because it was getting late here on the East Coast, and well, it's a Sunday night. It's not a Saturday night. But Ryan, given the day's festivities, um, do you kind of have a good feeling about the day after seeing both Microsoft and Bethesda?
I don't necessarily have a good or bad feeling. It was very predictable. We did the show the other day where we talked about what we expected. I don't remember if we discussed Bethesda or not, but I know we talked a lot of Microsoft. Microsoft's conference could not have played out any closer than what I expected it to be. Focused entirely on games. Some were hits, some were misses. No need to go into hardware whatsoever. And they didn't do that. I mean, it was a very strong conference. It was kind of a typical Microsoft conference, if you will.
I actually tend to agree on that, and I was actually surprisingly a little bit underwhelmed if you actually look at the entirety of the Bethesda conference. The Microsoft, I actually felt that they did a solid job following up EA's ridiculous performance, which actually I haven't gotten your opinion here on the air yet about EA, but EA was pretty lackluster. And kind of almost an embarrassment when you look at how they had to handle all the things that they shouldn't have had to handle to begin with.
Yeah, EA's, I didn't watch it live. I was playing catch up on it, but it felt very much like a, hey, we're here to tell the shareholders how great we're doing. The lack of gameplay and that they didn't show any gameplay from Madden or FIFA. That's your two big money makers. How can you not have gameplay for Madden ready at this point? It comes out in like 2 months. I mean, who made that call? It was terrible.
Yeah, and it's like EA, they transformed it to extra awkward because the entire conference was really beyond even the awkwardness that they typically have for one of their conferences. And when you actually look at all the basic apologizing they had to do with all the loot box announcements where they weren't going to have any, and all that, it was really just a bizarre, awkward situation. And going into Microsoft's conference today, though, which took place at 4 o'clock Eastern, really they came out of the gate with something that I think was kind of understated because they didn't really say much about it. And then just with everything else going on, it ended up an hour and a half almost conference. And they started right out of the gate with Halo Infinite with actually kind of a really interesting trailer. I know that you jumped in a little bit late. Did you actually get a chance to go back and see that trailer?
Yeah, I went back and watched it. And at first, I didn't even realize that it was a Halo game. I thought they did a very good job of kind of disguising it. I'm sure that wasn't by accident. We see some landscapes, we see some animals, and then, of course, we see the iconic helmet with the warthog reflected in the visor. That was a great trailer, man. And I am not a Halo guy, but that looks like a fun game.
It really was. It was a great trailer, and apparently they're going with a new engine for Halo Infinite. Um, and I literally tweeted out earlier in the day, I was like, it doesn't matter what the reveal is for Halo. Anytime I see Master Chief in some sort of a new reveal, it's instant. All the hairs on my arms are standing up. There's something about it. Like, I was an original Xbox guy. I had the Xbox 360, and the one thing that I absolutely love, I love the Halo franchise. That's one of the few shooters that I actually enjoy playing is Halo. And to see a new Halo Infinite coming out and seeing that Master Chief, just seeing the helmet, as soon as I see it, it's just bam, I'm there. You got me. They announced that they were going to have 50 games in total, 18 exclusives, and 15 world premieres. They had them. Some of them were mixed in there. Always kind of a weird presentation when they're telling you this is a world premiere. This is a this is an exclusive. And then, they have different terminology for all the different exclusives. So you never know what they're actually talking about whenever they present what they're going to have. One of the artsy games, and I know, Ryan, you really have an appreciation for the artsy side of a presentation of a game. They've got Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which is coming out. Is that an IP that interests you at all?
Not enough for me to buy an Xbox, but I mean, certainly I'm looking at a screen cap of the trailer right now, and I mean, it's gorgeous. It almost has kind of like a Harry Potter-esque feel to it. I love me some Harry Potter. Very bright, vivid colors. I like the purple and the pinks and stuff like that. I mean, it's very artistic, like you just mentioned, Brian. It's not a game I would play, even if I had one. Is that a console exclusive?
Yeah, like I was looking at the game and I was like, well, it looks like the last one, so I don't even know. Like whatever. Then they moved on to a game called Shakiro Shadows Die Twice. From what it's from. See, this is the problem with when you name your company From Software, because then when we want to talk about it, we want to say it's from you, but then we have to say from twice and we look like idiots. But anyway, it's like a zombie samurai game, and to me, looking at it, I got a lot of feelings of sort of almost a Jade Empire feel in the combat type things, mixed with like a God of War type thing where they're jumping on the large creatures and things like that. I love watching like Hong Kong kung fu movies and samurai movies and all that fun stuff. It's something that I really like to do. My wife makes fun of me for it, and that's one of the biggest things if you check my queue for Netflix, you would see a lot of that stuff on, which is why I love Donnie Yen, by the way. This game highly interests me, and I don't know if it's your type of game or not, but I just love the look and the feel of Shakiro, and I find it unfortunate that I don't know if it's an exclusive or not. I haven't actually looked it up.
The first thing I thought of, Brian, when I saw this trailer, he's going to bring up Donnie Yen tonight. It's very interesting concept. Now, I tried playing Dark Souls. I tried playing Bloodborne. Those games are not for me, but I mean, I do like the ninja aspect of it. I mean, it certainly was a great trailer. And it's an attention getter. That's the kind of thing you want to do at these conferences. Everybody was talking about it on Twitter. Not as much as Halo, of course, but that's a tough act to follow. They made waves, and that's what you're trying to do at these conferences. It's a very interesting concept.
Yeah, it really is, and that just always speaks to me. And I know there's a lot of people that like that type of game that don't like that type of game, and that's where I always struggle, because I want to have experiences with a lot of first and third person shooters that I'm just horrible at them. And it always makes me feel bad because I see everybody having so much fun. And then I'm like, well, that's just not my type of game. So what do you want? Then they moved on to Fallout 76, which we're not going to talk about now. We'll talk about once we hit to the Bethesda thing. But they did go with a game that I thought was highly interesting. Square Enix, pulling another story out of the Life is Strange universe with the awesome adventures of Captain Spirit. This game, just looking at it, I was totally into it, just seeing the whole father-son dynamic. Now, Ryan, I know that you really liked Life is Strange. What were you thinking watching this Captain Spirit promo?
Well, at first I didn't realize it was part of the Life of Strange. I even noticed that until they had the Instagram icon up there, and that was to the Life is Strange account. It's a beautiful game. It's got almost kind of like a cartoony quality, but it's still real enough that it doesn't look over the top. But I mean, it appears to be about a kid who's maybe going through some rough times. It appears his mother isn't in the picture. His dad might have a drinking problem. Stories that, a lot of people can relate to, and he's kind of living his life through these adventures. And I mean, that's just a cool concept and not something that you've seen in games before. And like you said, Brian, I absolutely love the Life is Strange game. So I'm very excited about that. I mean, I hope that is not an exclusive, because I'm going to want to play that on my PlayStation 4.
Yeah, and it actually reminded me a lot of Jimmy Zanwell's Amazing Moon Pie Adventure, or whatever it was. My kids had whenever. I'm just watching it and just seeing about all the superhero stuff, and like you said, clearly the kid is dealing with something. But it's kind of nice to see them portray kind of a father son relationship, and that's got me really intrigued. And I'm sure that whenever it comes out, I'll be right there and uh, at least considering picking it up. From there, they actually went into the Microsoft exclusive, which we were actually talking about the other day. They delayed Crackdown 3 until 2019. Now they're saying early 2019, so that doesn't seem quite as bad. Crackdown 3 is going to be an ambitious title. And I know that you're more into the shooters and things like that, games with that shooting element. Uh, Crackdown 3, is it something that interests you?
It really doesn't. I mean, if it was something that was on the PlayStation 4, it'd be a different story. I'd probably be looking into checking it out. But, it's just been, it's almost to the point now where it's been overhyped. And I got to see something I want to get my hands. I'd love to go into like a Microsoft store and play a demo of it. But I
Mm.
mean, it certainly is, like you said, ambitious. It's a beautiful game. But at what point are we going to see this thing come out? It's almost reaching like Duke Nukem kind of territory at this point. So, but yeah, I mean, it was a nice trailer.
Yeah, and it's kind of the sad part is just the fact that they had to delay it. It is going to be an ambitious title. I mean, they're
Yeah.
totally using the cloud servers and everything else to. I remember reading an article a while back in Gamer Informer where they talked about just how much is going into that game, and how basically people will be able to use their machines in their home to actually set up as like servers using the console. Um, and really, it's an excellent exercise of the machine's power if they're able to actually do it. But yeah, I'm not really a Crackdown person. I enjoyed the first game. I didn't play the second one. Uh, I'm not really looking forward to the third one. It's not something that's going to get me to go out and buy an Xbox One.
Yeah, of all the stuff we saw on this show, this feels like the title that has the potential to get the most out of the extra horsepower that the Xbox One X. We talked about that the other day. We're still waiting for that game to kind of really like harness all the horsepower that's under the hood of the Xbox One X. Crackdown 3, it looks to me like has the best chance to get the most out of that system.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about here in a little bit, I believe. With them folding some more smaller studios into the Microsoft Studios fold, the ideal thing that does happen is they start to build a better and more diverse, maybe, um, IP line that's all exclusives to Microsoft and the Xbox line. But Crackdown 3, I think it's pulls in a few people, but it's not going to be something that's going to sell that machine. Um, Next, we saw Metro Exodus. Actually, I almost skipped over that. Metro Exodus. I don't need to see it necessarily on the Xbox in order to kind of really like this. And it was during this time, I believe, that we actually had a little conversation on the phone, via text, that the post-apocalyptic shooter genre is really becoming crowded at this point, I guess you could say. But as I was telling our mutual friend Jimmy, also during the Bethesda show, um, if one of these post-apocalyptic shooter games would get my money right now, it would actually be Metro Exodus. What are your thoughts on that game? As we actually saw, it seems to be heavily Russia based.
Yeah,
To
yeah. I
begin
mean,
with.
like the same deal with Crackdown. It's a gorgeous game. I've never played an entry in the Metro series, and like you were just saying, Brian, it's just so played out. We've got Days Gone coming up on the PlayStation. We've got Last of Us 2. I'm not comparing these games, but they all have that same kind of. They're set against that backdrop, bleak, some kind of tragedy, whether it's zombies, whether it's punk gangs, whether it's some kind of fungus disease that wiped everybody out. I'm just exhausted with it, man. And I can't play all of these games. Metro is probably one I'm going to skip.
Yeah, and for real, and there are so many of them. And if you're gonna do something, if you're gonna emulate and copy, you got to do something that goes beyond to actually sell that. And it's unfortunate, but that's actually why we have Call of Duty for so long before Battlefield jumped in and pulled some of that away by doing something different. And now you saw actually Call of Duty kind of turn and go back towards what Battlefield tried with Battlefield 1. Um, it's an industry of imitation, which is why we see so many battle royale games coming out now, which is why we saw so many first person shooters, which is why for the longest time there was a lot of RPGs and things like that. Um, they get inspiration from each other, but they also follow the money. And if there's people buying them, then they're going to do it. Um, just burning through the next three real quick because they did cover Battlefield 5, Kingdom Hearts 3. I never played a Kingdom Hearts game, so I wasn't really that impressed or really excited. Besides the fact that they showed Wreck-It Ralph, which is pretty cool. Then they have more Sea of Thieves DLC. Neither one of us are really into the whole Sea of Thieves or understand really what that one's about. But the one that I really want to get your take on, because Ryan, you are a notoriously big into racing games. And next up in the lineup was actually Forza Horizon 4, a beautiful looking game from a layman like myself. Now, Ryan, you've played a lot of different racing games. Just seeing some of the things that they were doing with Forza Horizon 4, what were you thinking watching that entire demonstration?
Yeah, and this is where I actually joined the conference live, was right during the Forza, and what a time to walk into the show. It's just a game you can instantly recognize. This is Forza. It is just, they are the undisputed king of console racing games. You know, they found that perfect balance between casual gaming and hardcore. You know, they found that sweet spot that Gran Turismo just can't seem to locate anymore. They're the king. It's a gorgeous game. I love the location change. I think they're going over to Britain to where, you know, Mart is. So, you know, that's kind of a nice touch. But it's gorgeous. It's going to run in 60 frames per second on the X. I mean, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that high frame rate when you're playing a racing game. Man, that game looks gorgeous. That is the franchise that I would probably make the switch over to Xbox for. But I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, it's one of those games that it's not going to push me there because I'm not one of the 6% like you yourself are.
Yeah.
I would say. But if I got the machine, that would be in my library, period. Just like Project Cars is over on my shelf right now, even though I never play it. I played it a few times. But Forza, I absolutely loved Forza on my 360. I played that a lot. Forza Horizon 4, I would totally own that game. It's just a beautiful game. I loved everything that they were doing with it, from basically the different racing modes. They had just about every type of vehicle. The only vehicle I don't think they had was a pedal bike. They literally were doing everything with that. And it was just a really fantastic display of the power that they are actually bringing to that game with the Xbox One.
Yeah, and I would say at this point, you know, along with Halo and Gears of War, Forza is kind of in that cornerstone of the Xbox franchise at this point. I mean, it's well established. Everybody knows it. Like I said a few minutes ago, it's instantly recognizable. It is one of their marquee products.
Yeah, it really is. And next up was actually the Initiative, which is sort of what they called it, where they were bringing in 5 different lower key developers into the Microsoft Studios fold, including Compulsion Games, which they showed We Happy Few, which was kind of an interesting kind of game. It almost had a Grim Fandango type feel if it were to meet like with the really lame Fable type game. And a little bit freaky looking as a title. Also kind of fun, had me a little bit interested, but it's not going to be something that I feel like I need to ever play either. And just one of those things that was recognizable, but it's not moving anything. Then they went into Player Underground, or Player Unknown's Battleground again. I don't know if they're just adding stuff to it or whatever. I didn't really pay attention because honestly, yeah, Players Unknown or Player Unknown, whatever.
Yeah, I definitely thought that this was the most boring part of Microsoft's conference.
Yeah, and it's like it's really kind of behind Fortnite. And I don't know why. Like, I just downloaded H1Z1 because I haven't got the opportunity to play that. But my son was playing it while I was watching the Microsoft conference. And that looks interesting enough, too. Um, but I almost feel like PlayerUnknown Battleground just kind of came out at the wrong time because it was competing almost with Fortnite. And Fortnite just clearly won that little battle. But Tales of Vesperia is also coming out, and for those of you who are into Japanese RPGs, which I don't think that's you, Ryan, that's not
No.
your type of game. This definitive edition that's coming out is sort of a long time coming, so I'm kind of looking forward to that. I'll probably end up picking it up at some point if I have the money. Um, but it's a game that a lot of people are going to be. It's well known in the Japanese RPG fandom, and it's actually getting a translation to North America, which is fantastic. Next up, we actually talked a little bit about this one when it was going on. Uh, Mainly, I'm going to throw this to you because this is definitely your type of game. Um, and I was finding it's my type of game as I'm watching it. I was all geared up. My blood pressure was, my heart was going. Tom Clancy's The Division 2. Go ahead and break that one down as best as you can, because I honestly am not good enough with these games to actually be a professional voice for it.
Well, I mean, it looked. I never played the Division 1, so I'm probably not the expert. I've played lots of Tom Clancy's games over the years, with the Splinter Cells and the Rainbow Six, of course. I mean, his stuff. I mean, I know his name is on the game. He's not making the actual game, but his stuff always turns out well, and this thing looked really, really cool. I'm not sure I want to play a campaign with other people live. And I don't know if that was what was going on here. But, I mean, the gameplay looked awesome. The environments looked great. I loved kind of the exploration. You know, they kind of burst in there, and the Christmas tree was there, and you saw a deer. I mean, the environment felt very, very alive. But, man, I don't play nice with others online. I'm not sure I want to do that in a campaign. I kind of like the campaign to just carve out my own little niche there and just, you know, get a little quiet time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way, because here's the thing. I suffer from even doing this. Like, even doing this whole video series is kind of a task for me, because I suffer from a lot of an inferiority complex and like not having very much self-confidence. And whenever I go into a game like this, I know damn well that I'm not very good at it to begin with. And I always feel like I'm going to be letting other people down. And I carry that stress with me like all the time. So doing the group co-op like that, unless I'm with actual good friends that I can play and they all know how I am, it becomes like a big anxiety thing for me. Like, I'm just like, and I get completely stressed out.
Well, at least everybody in multiplayer games is always patient and nice, and they don't ever use bad language. And they're, you know, it's such a nice, healthy environment if you're a little bit on the anxious side. So, but like you just mentioned, Brian, if it was you, me, Mart, and Josh Poitras were playing the game together, it'd be fun. But if it's, you know, me and, you know, blah, blah, blah from, you know, Kansas City playing together, and he's a jerk and he's mad because I didn't kill the guy fast enough, it's not going to be fun for anyone. And I don't want to party like that. You know, I'm probably going to swipe left on this game.
Yeah, and that's exactly what my problem with Fallout 76, I think, is going to be, which we'll talk about in a bit, because they did cover a lot in Fallout 76 and the Bethesda conference. The next thing they did, though, they went to the Game Pass, and they featured this Game Pass from Microsoft, which is set to have over 100 titles. Basically, a monthly subscription of $9.99. Essentially, Netflix for your game system. With all the games that they've got coming out, they're even going to have Crackdown 3 at launch. They're having all these things. I became instantly jealous of Xbox owners for having this subscription-based service for games, because they're literally getting all the games right there, just streamed right to their box. Just a fantastic endeavor. And do you think that this is actually sort of a window into the future of gaming?
Yeah, I really do. And I think it was the head of Ubisoft yesterday mentioned that too, that this is the last, this upcoming console generation is going to be the last, because we're going to move to the subscription-based where these games exist only on a cloud. That makes me tremendously sad because, I mean, I'm a guy who grew up blowing in Atari cartridges to make them work. I like having my collection of games on the wall so I can look at them and show them off when we have guests. I don't like the idea of not having like a physical disc that I can put into, but we can't stop the movement. It's going to happen. We saw it with EA yesterday that they talked about it a little bit too, the subscription, the joy of paying for a subscription, the guy said. So, I mean, you can't stop the wheels of progress, and we are heading down that direction. I just hope it staves itself off for another decade.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it really shows that it's a lot closer than we even thought. Just their ability to do it, and with all the bandwidth that it's going, I mean, the only thing that's really going to stop it from happening are internet service providers. If they start choking out with like the net neutrality and stuff like that, because let's face it, bandwidth is expensive. And we always talk about how it affected on our end, but it's also expensive on the company's end that is actually providing it. It's not it's not just a thing that's like there in the air and we just got to pick it out of the sky. Everything has to be maintained, and it's I think that's the only thing that could possibly slow it down. But at the same time, we're advancing so fast technologically that, I mean, 3-4 years ago, we never could have even seen this actually being a possibility. But it's here. Next, they had a couple of things right in a row, a couple of big ones, a couple of duds, which is typically the case. I'll just rifle them off here. Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Then they had a skateboarding game called Session, an MMORPG called Black Desert, and then Devil May Cry 5, followed by some more Cuphead content. And the only comment that I have about any of those, because the majority of them I'm just not all that interested in. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the only thing I would like to comment on is I absolutely love the evolution that they have shown of Lara Croft in the Tomb Raider series. When they rebooted that series, I think they said that just did such a great service to that character and that franchise.
Yeah, I love those games. I played the first Tomb Raider game on PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4. It is one of my favorites. This is going to sound like sacrilege as a PlayStation guy, but those Tomb Raider games do some things better than Uncharted. You know, there's more exploration. They feel more open, which is kind of an important thing to have in a treasure hunting game. The tombs are cool. And like you said, Brian, what they did with the characters for that, because she's surrounded by a lot of interesting people in these games. They did such a great service to that and breathed life into a franchise that probably was dead until they went and rebooted it. I mean, it's so much fun, and I cannot wait to get my hands on that game.
Yeah, it just looks great. Everything about it looks great, and I was so impressed just watching it. Devil May Cry 5, it got a lot of reaction on the internet as I was trying to keep an eye on it. I've never played any of the Devil May Cry games. It looked okay or whatever. I'm just not a fan of it, and I've never played them. So maybe I am a fan of it and just don't know it. But that one's going to do probably very well commercially. And then one of the jokes that we actually had was actually you had tweeted me just as I was thinking of it, or you texted me just as I was thinking it. They had Tunic, which is basically Zelda with a fox. And you instantly made the comment, right, about how Nintendo's legal team is probably already like in the process of trying to get a cease and desist order or something out of it.
Yeah, they pulled no punches on ripping that off. That looked like a 3D version of Link to the Past with some fancier graphics and a fox. Good luck with that, Microsoft. You know, Nintendo's lawyers are already huddling together, and they are going to stomp that game out of existence, or try to at least.
Yeah, and it literally will be one of those tests where Nintendo is just freakishly aggressive about defending their IPs, and when everybody sees that, it just says, "Hey, this looks a lot like The Legend of Zelda." You know that they're gonna have somebody out there trying to do something. They'll be looking for some sort of a gem or a monster that looks very similar to their guy, and they'll be right on that, unfortunately.
Well, if you're gonna rip off a Nintendo game, Zelda's a good one to rip off. So
yeah. Well, the next game up was actually Dragon Ball Z inspired with Jump Force. I know our good friend on Twitter, Josh, uh, he was completely stoked about this game. Obviously, he's a big Dragon Ball Z fan. My thing is, I'm not 100% sure if it's like a fighting game because they said unite to fight. Um, and they just released a fighting game for Dragon Ball Z here recently. But Jump Force, it basically looked like a 3D rendered cartoon. The promotion that they did for it. Um, did you glean anything that I didn't glean from that?
I don't tread in the anime water. I mean, it just it looked pretty crazy, you know, and I just kind of I may or may not have gone to get a glass of Coke when that was going on.
Yeah. Well, next up was actually Dying Light 2. And I know you had some commentary on that. And honestly, I can't remember what it was that you were saying about Dying Light 2 because to me, it's not. I wasn't that interested in it. And I know that a lot of people are. Dying Light was a pretty popular game. But again, I never played that one. Is Dying Light 2 actually something that you're interested in?
Yeah, I think at this point, Brian, is when we were swapping texts about the fact that we have an endless supply of these kind of games. And I mean, you can't play them all, guys. I mean, there's just too many of these zombie apocalypse games, and I don't care if it's vampires, zombies, you know, plague, you know, they're just it's too much. Just let us breathe a little bit. Give us something just a little bit different. But like you mentioned earlier, they know that this stuff sells. People are going to buy it. The first game was super popular. I mean, if you're into this kind of stuff, if this is your genre, this is a beautiful game. The mechanics seem to be really, really cool. It seemed to run really, really smooth in the demo. I mean, it looks like a good game, but I'm not going to play it.
Yeah, and that's literally why I don't even know what to say about it. Because it's, what do you want? What are you going to do? Like, you're going to make some comment about that post-apocalyptic world that you didn't make in the other one. So what can you do?
Yeah, I mean, as we sit here and recap this, Brian, I have a hard time differentiating what we saw in Dying Light and the Metro, you know, because it's just like, well, was that shot from that? Was that because, I mean, it just feels like the same thing to me over and over again. I need a break.
Yeah, I hear you there. Which we got a break in the next presentation, which was a world premiere exclusive for Battletoads, and I'm going to admit right now in front of everybody that when I was watching it, my son was actually sitting in this chair, and he was playing on the PlayStation while I was watching the Microsoft presentation, and I literally yelled out, "Yes, Battletoads!" I was like, "This is amazing! This is fantastic!" When we went to see Ready Player One, and there was a huge battle scene, and who was there? Battletoads, and I was freaking out. Then in the theater, I was like, "Yeah, this is amazing!" I love Battletoads. I love them. I love them by themselves. I love them with Double Dragon. I don't care. Give me more Battletoads. And when I saw that, I was literally jumping out of my seat. I was so excited. Now, I feel like a dork even admitting to all that. I am 40 years old and jumping around because of Battletoads. Ryan, you said that it's not something that would pull you over to the Xbox as an exclusive title from Rare. But is it a game that you would pick up? Is that a franchise that you would pick up if you actually already had the console?
Well, my reaction was a little more tempered than yours was. I was very excited, and I remembered that damn hover bike level. And I'm like, shit, I got to play that again. No, I please don't bring that back. Make the game, because that level was impossible to beat. Battletoads was cool. It's really awesome. You mentioned that they just popped up in Ready Player One, which is a great movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out as soon as you can. We didn't see any gameplay footage. We just got the logo and some sound effects. But man, it's not a huge get for Microsoft, but it's a cool get, you know. And it's something I don't know if you mentioned this, Brian, but it's an exclusive to Xbox. So that's a pretty cool thing. But I do have to wonder how much the Battletoads resonate with younger crowd. You know, where it speaks to us because we played the games when we were kids. Much less recognizable than the TMNT, which they were kind of a ripoff of. But it's going to be interesting to see how this performs to a younger crowd.
Yeah, And I think that's a very valid point because we have seen various titles actually come and be reintroduced, whether it's Pac-Man Championships or Mega Man has been getting a lot of love lately, and they're doing fine. They're doing okay. They're not big hits, and I don't think they expect Battletoads to be a big hit either. Um, but I know with a certain crowd in the 35 to 45 range, definitely there's something to be had there, because of all of us old people are going to be jumping on it if we have the opportunity. One game that I absolutely was all in as soon as I seen it, as soon as I first saw the first screenshot, Just Cause 4. Now, I know that you got in a little bit late playing Just Cause 3. Just Cause 3 was so fun. And would you be willing to give Just Cause 4 another go?
Well, it's hard to say no to this game because it's got a freaking tornado in it, and apparently you drive into the tornado and then jump off your car. Yeah, I mean that's pretty damn cool. So I mean, it's a great trailer. It's so silly and over the top and borderline ridiculous. This game. I assume 4 is going to have the same great like destructible environments and stuff. That's what that game 3. That was my favorite part of that. It's got the grappling hook and stuff. I mean, it's got really unique gameplay. We were just talking about how tired we are of the zombie games. This is something completely different, even though this is the 4th version of the game. So yeah, I'll buy it. I don't know if it's going to be a day one release purchase for me, but at some point I am going to play this game.
Yeah, and you said it's over the top, and I think there's a distinguishment to be made there because there's over the top, and then there's over the top silly. And I think Just Cause, that whole franchise, and Just Cause 3 in particular, really did an excellent job of walking that line. Where, yes, you could shoot somebody with a grappling hook and attach them to a car that was driving by, and then you get to watch them fly away. But it wasn't like these crazy things where you just throw a pencil at somebody and there's a huge atomic explosion out of it, which is what sometimes companies actually go and they just get carried away with what they're trying to do. And Just Cause 3, it had such a good balance of things that were funny, but things that were still like within the realm of that's insane and it probably wouldn't happen, but it's not so insane. And that's what I absolutely loved about it. It was just so engaging to play, just a good time. And I love when a game has that little thing like Horizon Zero Dawn. You take that game, and the one thing that I love doing was just shooting the canisters on the back of the grazers. Um, I could not pass a grazer without shooting one in the canisters with a fire arrow.
It was so addictive. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like this, the reactions and everything. And I was that way with Just Cause 3, which is shooting the people with the grappling hook right in the face. I loved it. That was my favorite thing about the whole game. And it's such a mundane little thing, but I loved it so much, and it made that entire game for me. I think that the end of the Microsoft conference was actually pretty strong. Because next they moved straight from Just Cause 3, obviously from Battletoads, and went to the Gears of War Pop, which is basically, I'm picturing them trying to make a new Lego series using Funko Pops as the background. Now, the Gears of War Pop thing was silly, but I'm interested in seeing what kind of gameplay they actually have. If they restrict these things in some way, because where I love Lego games is that they actually utilize the concept of Legos themselves. It's not just the characters of existing in this little world dressed up. It's them actually building and interacting. And I don't see that same thing being available with a Funko Pop, which is just a vinyl toy with a big head. Is that something like, would you be interested in seeing a series of that type of game?
Well, I think this is a great way to kind of throw the fishing line out there and see how many people take a nibble on this. I think it's really the platform of going mobile with this is the perfect environment. If this was like a $29.99 console game, I don't think it would be very hot, but mobile is absolutely perfect for it. It's something you can play with your kid when you're waiting at the dentist or at the doctor's office or something like that. it's cute. I mean, let's just face it, it's cute. These characters are adorable. They don't actually say words. They just kind of go meep, So I mean, people are gonna eat that stuff up. Kids are gonna absolutely love it. It was cool. It was kind of they kind of punked us with that. We didn't see that coming.
Yeah, and I actually tend to agree with you on that on the mobile thing. If you're making a mobile game and you get it in kids' hands, and then you're able to take them and show a game like Gears of War, and actually make it presentable in a manner to kids, and then you've actually got them into that franchise. Now they know something about that franchise. So as they're getting older, what do they want? They want the Xbox One because it's got Gears of War. So I think that's smart. I'm actually extremely surprised that the first game that's being released with Funko Pops in it would be a Gears of War, because they literally have licensing for everything for Funko Pops. And to know that Gears of War is what gets the first Funko Pop game, it's bizarre to me. Like, I don't understand that at all. But what they did, they basically focused on 3 different titles for Gears of War, and that was the Gears Pop. Then they went to Gears Tactics, which I love tactics games, so I want to see a little bit more of this. You take any game that's a big franchise, whether it's Final Fantasy or whether it's whatever, I don't care. If you put a tactics in it, there's something about tactics games that I like. They're simple, accessible, and it just, I like switching it up every now and again. Are you a fan of tactics games? Have you played very many of them?
Not very many. I played a couple of the Star Wars ones back on PC. I played the Killzone game, which was kind of like a tactics game. They're okay. I mean, it's a nice change up. I think I downloaded the Battlestar Galactica one. That's a turn-based strategy game. I mean, that's kind of the same type of thing. But yeah, I mean, they're all right. They're not going to be my first choice, but I'll play them if they're sitting there.
Yeah. I just think it's good marketing because they're really expanding what they're doing with Gears and kind of marketing that brand to possibly a greater masses if they're putting it on the mobile side. And then of course they introduced Gears 5, which, if you follow the Gears franchise at all, which I've have from a distance, it looks kind of interesting because they're actually showing some dissent amongst the survivors, the people that are actually going out there. And Gears has always been about the battle between the humans and the monsters, and adding that element of having the battle between the humans and the humans, and the emotional toll that must take, I think is a smart move story wise. Um, I can't even think of anything on the PlayStation that would kind of fall into the Gears franchise as kind of an equivalent. Is there anything in Sony's stable that actually kind of fits that Gears formula?
The closest thing would be Killzone, but they've only had 3 games of that. Well, they had 4 with the PlayStation 4 one, but it doesn't have the staying power. I mean, people were very lukewarm on it. I mean, most people that play Gears of War absolutely love Gears of War. That's one of the strongest fan bases in gaming. It's got one of the most iconic weapons in video games with the Lancer. I mean, everybody recognizes that gun, chainsaw combination thing. It's just badass and cool. I've only played the first Gears of War, but man, you fire up that chainsaw. Wow, what a just the sound and the controller vibrating. It's just wow. It's so awesome. Gears of War is pretty damn cool.
Yeah, I want one of those chainsaws, just for around the house.
You do a lot of construction projects.
That almost was the end of the show, and Phil Spencer came out and talked about how he wants the Xbox One to actually be playable, to have games that are streaming to literally every device, which is a smart move for long term. There's so many devices out there, tablets and phones and literally just about anything, laptops, notebooks, PCs, computers, TVs, all that fun stuff. So, I mean, it's obvious that they want to get it on as many platforms and screens as possible. But then it kind of glitched out, and I immediately tweeted this, and like seeing the transfer from Phil Spencer talking to having everything kind of glitch out, and his reaction. He's not an actor, but his reaction, he sold it well. I guess you could say. But they moved into CD Projekt Red's upcoming game here, Cyberpunk 2077, and just that whole sequence and the way they happened and the way they presented that from a visual standpoint, from a production standpoint, I honestly believe that was my favorite moment at E3 that I've ever seen. Um, Whenever they start doing this sort of thing, did you have any expectations, or did you kind of have a feeling that it was going to actually be Cyberpunk 2077 since everybody knows about that game already?
I had honestly forgotten all about Cyberpunk until then, and I was kind of the same. I'm like, well, what the hell is going on here, you know? But I always appreciate. We talk about how dull and boring these conferences get. You know, I mean, look at yesterday with EA, for God's sake, just painful. It was like fingernails on the chalkboard with that thing. But when you see a company go and do something creative and different like that, it really makes it stand out. And even though this is a multi-platform game, that was such a cool way for Microsoft to present that and kind of make that, kind of capture that moment. When people think of Cyberpunk now, they're going to think of such a unique kind of moment at this big conference.
Yeah. And Cyberpunk 2077, and we were actually talking, Jimmy and I, later. It's one of those games that you look at it and you say, okay, this could be really interesting and fun. And then you look at CD Projekt Red and you say, man, The Witcher 3 was fantastic. A lot of people say it's one of the best games ever made. So you want to buy in. But as Jimmy pointed out, The Witcher 1 and The Witcher 2 weren't necessarily all that great. So you're talking about CD Projekt Red, which we have a lot of confidence in them because of recency with The Witcher 3 and everything that actually brought. My fear with Cyberpunk 2077, as I told Jimmy, was that it ends up sort of a Deus Ex type of game with neon. And I don't want them to follow too closely to that type of storyline where everybody's got mods and all this other fun stuff. And then you've got all these, like, I don't fully know what to expect with this game. I know that it looks pretty. I know that I'm interested in it. I know that it makes my gamer predator salivate. But I'm not quite sure what the heck we're gonna get out of this game. And I mean, it does look pretty and it looks all that, but CD Projekt Red, do they deserve all the positive expectations that we're giving them just based on The Witcher 3? Or is this something that do you think gamers should be sort of aware of and maybe a little bit leery of?
It's just so hard to predict what this is going to do because we've seen so little of it. I mean, I haven't really paid much attention to this one because it initially didn't really pique my interest. But, you know, like you said, they've got the pedigree, and I wouldn't cast too much judgment on them for Witcher 1 and 2 because that was a long time ago. You learn from your mistakes, and you know they can take all the knowledge from 1, 2, and 3 and now move it on to this, whereas they only had the knowledge from 1 and 2 to make Witcher 3. So I mean, people love Witcher 3. It's hard not to trust those guys at this point.
Yeah, and it makes it kind of difficult, and it's something that I never really actually thought about because I was just looking at them as I was just saying, I was one of the ones that was just like, well, The Witcher 3 was great, and this is going to be awesome too. And then I was like, as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, wait a minute, maybe not. So a little bit of a doubt creeped in my head. I can't wait to see more of the game and see what it's actually going to play like, what they're actually going for, because we see all these trailers and things like that, and they don't always show gameplay trailers. They just show snippets and videos and cutscenes essentially. And I kind of wish they would show more of the gameplay itself in the trailers. But that was Microsoft's conference, and just looking at a wrap up of Microsoft, when you looked at that conference, and we talked the other day about what they have to do to consider it a success. Do you feel that they had a successful conference? Do you feel like Microsoft did what they need to do to at least stay put in the console wars, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, it was a sideways move. I mean, I don't think they really blew me away. They didn't have enough IPs. I would have liked to see something I always reference Alan Wake on these shows, but something like that. I'm not saying specifically continue that franchise, but just something like totally fresh and new. What the hell are they doing with Splinter Cell? I mean, you can't do something with that franchise. You've got some of these licenses. Do something with this stuff. I love those Splinter Cell games, man. That was one of my favorite titles on the 360. I want to see that stuff come back. So lacking that, that's my biggest problem with Microsoft, and it kind of continued this year.
Yeah. And I kind of look at it like you have to literally look at the conference from Microsoft in two different lights. You have to look at it as somebody who doesn't have an Xbox One, and you have to look at it as somebody who does. Now, I think if you have an Xbox One, you're actually looking at this conference and you're actually feeling pretty good because they had a lot of good titles. They had a lot of good things coming down the pike that you will be able to access. Just on the strength of Halo Infinite and Forza and the Gear stuff. Those alone, if you already own that system, that's fantastic for you. On the other hand, if you don't own one, I don't think this conference is going to sell you a machine necessarily. Um, but Forza really, whew.
It's close.
If I had the money, I would be thinking about it.
Yeah, of what they showed today, Forza is the closest thing to a system seller. Apologies to Halo. Gears of War 5 doesn't do it. But for me personally, it would be Forza would push me over the edge. And, you know, if I had the disposable cash, hell yeah, I'd have an Xbox One X. Don't have it right now, so can't part with that money.
Yeah. And as much as I like Battletoads and would love to get my hands on Battletoads, I'm not willing to buy a machine to do it. At least not at this point. So yeah, I mean, if you have the machine, it was a great show. If you don't have the machine, it was still a solid show. It was good for you, Xbox and Microsoft. But that is what it is. A few hours after that, Bethesda took the stage. Bethesda's already built sort of a reputation from a couple years ago when they released Fallout 4 and just really had a big splash. So I think they're kind of held to that standard now. They had a decent show, and I actually didn't take any notes because I was continuously tweeting doing that one. But they started out the show covering a couple different games. They talked about Skyrim, and they talked about shit. What else? I'm like, I forget. And I knew
Wolfenstein, Fallout, pretty much. They covered almost every franchise. Doom was in there. I mean, they hit all the buttons, man.
Yeah, they literally talked about every IP that's in their library, which is weird. They started out with Andrew WK and Reach, too. The crowd's response it was just not good.
Who's Andrew WK is what everybody's facing the audience said. Man, he poured his heart into that performance, but the crowd, they weren't reacting very well. A couple people were taking pictures. I saw a couple fists being pumped, but yeah, they didn't love his performance. But I love you, Andrew WK.
Yeah, and what's always fun about when that happens is you always have like all these people just sitting there. Clearly, they have no idea who Andrew WK is. They're not really into that. They're just there because they're being paid to be there. And then you'll find that one guy that's in there headbang and stuff, and they become so noticeable at that point because it's like he's the only person having a good time and actually is happy to be there. And of course, we had that a couple of people in the audience were like that. And I always throw it back to when PlayStation and Sony decided to start the Shenmue 3 Kickstarter. And like literally everybody was just sitting there like, okay. And then there was one guy who was like, yes. And I'm like, that is just so that it is so embodying of the E3 experience anymore. But be that as it may. They went straight from Rage 2, I believe, to Prey. I think they went straight to Prey from there, which they're actually starting a mode with the Prey game that they're adding in called something Hunter. Basically, you take the 5 people versus 1, with 5 people taking the role of the mimics, so you can change into any object and sort of attack. And basically, you just have to survive if you're the one. And if you're not one of the ones, you're one of the five, then you got to kill the other people. In the face of all the battle royale games and stuff like that, I am absolutely fascinated by this mode. I think it's a great idea. Um, is it something that you find to be interesting? Is it something that you would totally be interested in and really see taking off?
It's an interesting concept, and anytime we see somebody think outside the box, you just mentioned battle royale. That's kind of been the running joke throughout this E3. I was watching the IGN chat going along, and I must have seen battle royale. Does it have battle royale 1,000 times during this show? You know, that's the running joke this year. It's funny. It's the new. I took an arrow in the knee. But yeah, it's cool to see somebody take a chance. And the one thing Bethesda really has going for it, and they make great games, but they are willing to think outside the box. We're going to talk more about that later. But it's just creative thinking, and that's what the industry needs. So we can kind of move away from all this been there, done that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it was one of the things that I was actually looking forward to with the Friday the 13th game, because they were actually going to have something similar. I believe it was going to be 8 versus 1, so you could play as Jason and go to attack all the other people, and the other people just had to survive. I just think it's a great little concept, and it would only work in certain games. Because really, like with all the zombie games and stuff like that, you can't make people zombies because zombies kind of aimlessly move around. Um, so strategies and stuff like that, it's not very zombie like. But games like that, I just find it to be very interesting. And to be honest, I haven't played Prey. Um, I've seen that people who play it like it, and just the concept of it was kind of interesting. Having not really paid attention to it before, but that extra mode, I'm really into that. I think it's a cool idea. Um, then it talked about what they talked about Wolfenstein a little bit, and the new mode there. They talked about the Quake. What are the Quake champions? Um, are you a Quake guy? Because I have literally never played it.
Quake is one of those games that you hear about this time every year around these conferences. It's got a rabid fan base. I have no clue what kind of game Quake is. I don't know if it's a turn-based strategy. It could be a side-scrolling action game. No clue, but man, people love it. I am completely in the dark with Quake. I was so bored during that segment.
Yeah, yeah, I'm the same way. And I'm watching the gameplay, and I'm like, wow, this looks like PlayStation 3 or late PlayStation 2 quality. It just wasn't standing out to me as something that I was really even be interested in remotely. They also talked about Doom Eternal, which is a fantastic name for a game. Doom Eternal. Um, the Doom reboot that they just came out with 2, 3 years ago was really good, really slick, uh, great graphics, just all the craziness you would expect Doom to be. Doom Eternal, I'm pretty sure that they're going to have they're going to continue with that same type of thing. Did you play the Doom reboot, and are you interested in the Doom Eternal?
I have never played a Doom game. It was a cool trailer. I liked what I heard about the game. I mean, it looks like something like if it was free on the PSN, I'd pick it up. I'm probably not going to buy a Doom game, but if you're into that stuff, that's cool. It looks like an interesting game.
Yeah. The Doom reboot was just chaos. I'm not good at those games, and I probably beat like the first level, and then I was like, I'm so frustrated. I need shotguns in my life. I just was not good at it. Then it kind of moved into, I believe at that point they moved into Fallout 76, which you immediately had texted me and said, well, this would be great if we didn't just see this a couple hours ago.
Yeah.
Luckily, they expanded on it and talked about it quite a bit. Um, it's going to be a fully online experience. And to me, as soon as I heard that, I looked at that as a negative. That's kind of a massive negative for me because I don't spend a lot of time online um, and things like that. I just don't have that kind of time. Why? Because I'm a parent. I'm not in college or a high school student that is going to have an entire summer to play or whatever. I can't spend all my time on games as much as I would like to at times. Um, So you're hearing about this being online and stuff like that. It's 4 times the size. Um, have you? I know that you're not as big into Fallout as I am, but does that kind of shy you away from a game if they say it's a fully online experience?
Yeah, it was immediate. My reaction, I think I texted you barf. That was my knee jerk reaction. I saw the chat on IGN felt the same way. There was a lot of negativity surrounding that. Now, he did almost immediately bring up the fact that you can play this as a single player game. So that kind of was a little bit of salve on that wound. But I'm wondering, how are you going to balance the experience? Like, how is it going to work? Is it going to, he mentioned like the easiest way to beat like some of the monsters is going to be as a group. Well, is it going to make it nearly impossible for me to do that as a single player? I just don't think this multiplayer thing works for a game of this size. We're talking hundreds of hours people put into these Fallout games. That's a lot of time if you kind of got your own like little club, certain group of people that you're working with. I mean, how are you ever going to get together for that amount of time? It's just so many questions I have. Um, I mean, it looks cool. I don't know why it has to be 4 times as big as Fallout 4. I mean, that map was already huge, but we do reach a point where these things are too big, especially for a completionist like me.
Yeah, and it's an ambitious um, endeavor. When you actually look at taking a game like Fallout that's historically been single player, you're living in a world, and just adding all these people into it. And I say, hey, good. You're trying to innovate. You're trying to be different. You're trying to expand on something that exists that people love. Um, but like we were saying earlier, it's kind of like if people can ruin something, they will do everything they can to do exactly that. And that's what I picture happening here. Because the thing is, when he's talking and he's telling us all these things, in the perfect world where everybody is actually cooperating and they're playing in their roles and stuff like that, you know that everybody has these egos, and like I think it was you that said you're just gonna get a bunch of people spam killing that are just gonna go and all they'll do, they're not playing to do anything except for ruin everybody else's experience. And those people will find each other and they will create essentially game raiders, if you will, and they'll just ruin everybody else's experience. Um, I want to know the mechanics of the game. I want to know the backbone of it. I want to know what you can do to actually combat that. Because honestly, if I can go on and I can get on there with friends like you, like Jimmy, like anybody else that might want to play that I'm friendly with, and go out there and explore this place, then that sounds like a fun time, especially if I get to go. And part of it is we're going to overtake a missile silo and blow some stuff up with a nuclear missile. That was such a fantastic idea. And only can be ruined by jerks that are out there
Yeah.
in the gaming world.
Well, and like I just said, I continue to be concerned about how the single player game. I mean, if you're playing offline and you don't want to interact with all these potential jerks who are going to shoot you in the face and steal all your stuff, does that mean the world is going to feel like super empty? Or if you're playing offline, does that replace by NPCs? I mean, there's just so much we don't know. The game just got announced for real. So, I mean, I'm not putting pressure on them. They don't have to answer these questions immediately. But there's a lot of red flags on this one for me. Like you just mentioned, I'm not as high on Fallout as you are. I didn't finish Fallout 4. I loved Fallout 3. So I'm not that into the franchise at this point. But, I mean, the nukes alone, my ears perked up for that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think it's an interesting concept that they are taking it to West Virginia. It looks like there's mining equipment. They said the world is 4 times bigger than Fallout 4 was. All the graphics are 16 times better. You can see everything in the distance, and it did. It looked like a beautiful, beautiful game. Um, there are way too many question marks early. And I'm thinking about signing up for the beta, but it is coming out in November. November 14th, I believe, is the date that they actually gave for that. Um, but from there, they actually moved on to a mobile game for Elder Scrolls, which was called Elder Scrolls Blades. Um, the one thing that I always wonder about with mobile games, one, you want to talk about it looks good, fine. It looks good. The controls looked a little weird to me as they were trying to show us what they were doing. The one question though that I always want to know when they present a mobile game, and they never ever are going to answer: what does this do to the battery life of your phone when you're trying to play this game? Because something like that has that much graphical things going on, it seems to me like it would kill your battery pretty quick.
Yeah, and as
Uh,
far as mobile games are, we mentioned earlier the Funko Pop thing. I think that is so much better suited. That kind of cartoony, silly kind of fun. That's the kind of mobile game I'm experiencing. I want to experience. I'm not going to sit in the dentist office and play Skyrim. It's not just because I'm not that invested in Skyrim, but I want to play Skyrim on a 65-inch TV. I don't want to play it on a mobile device.
yeah, yeah, and the thing is, we use our phones too much to dedicate that much battery power to something like that, and maybe it's because of where we live, um, and what we have available. We're not riding the subway, so maybe it's different for somebody who rides the subway or public transportation or whatever. Um, but if I can't have my phone available to me where I'm going and when I come back, then the game is just not worth it to me. And I just look at a game like that and just everything that it's going on in that game, I'm just looking at it and I'm like, okay, so how quickly do I go from 100 to 15% on my battery? And something like that, it just seems like it would be like a 20-minute game that I would be able to play. And it just seems way too intense to be looking at my phone like that because I just can't do it. I can't do that while I'm out and about. Um, that said, they also showed us a little snippet of Starfield. And now they didn't say much of anything, but just the fact that they're taking a dive into space, I'm ready for that. And Ryan, you're a sci-fi guy. Um, what would you actually like to see out of Starfield as they develop it, as they reveal more information? What type of game would you actually like to see if you're going to space?
Well, obviously, we know absolutely nothing. We got the logo, we got a planet with the sun coming out behind it. So basically, working off nothing. If it ends up being the same mechanics and the style and the presentation as we got from Skyrim and Fallout, I mean, I'm fine with that. If you can incorporate space travel with that, if we get Fallout in space, sign me up. I'm on board. I love that stuff. Sci-fi is my genre. This could be what Mass Effect Andromeda wasn't, and we could finally get something like that. We they can't make us Star Wars games. Maybe Bethesda can kind of step in and fill that void. And give us that sci-fi fix. I mean, the concept was cool. We saw a spaceship that looked kind of cool. So just so much we don't know about it.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that Jimmy keyed on, and he texted me immediately. He's like, they called it Next Generation, uh, which is a Star Trek reference. Which if you actually look on the board of directors of Bethesda, is one of the higher ups. It's CBS who owns the rights to Star Trek. So it's like there's this whole conspiracy going on about how Star Trek influenced that will actually be. Um,
Uh-oh.
yeah, and I would love to see a space generated RPG. Much like you said, like the Mass Effect series, something similar to that, or like a Dead Space survival kind of thing. Um, if they decide to make this an online experience, I think that would be a huge mistake because then they'd be going up against Eve Online and things like that, and I think that would be a huge mistake if they did that. Um, so if they're going single player, which I think they are, I think they are. I'm really interested in something pseudo realistic, but like you said, if it's kind of Fallout meets Rebel Galaxy, because I really liked Rebel Galaxy, I am all over that. I would love that. Make resources and finding resources in space matter. Make trade matter. Do all of that. There's so much that they could do because now you're talking about the future and not some dystopian future. Um, so there's all kinds of opportunity.
And
And
I
then
mean,
they,
I don't know how you felt about it, but the vibe I got from this is 2020 at the earliest.
yeah, yeah, it really is. Um, and then they closed out the show right with just that little sample teaser of Elder Scrolls 6, which they didn't even say what the hell it was. So they just said they're working on it. Kind of anticlimactic at that point. But overall, what would you say about Bethesda's conference? Do you look at that and you say that was a solid? How would you describe it?
The thing about me with Bethesda is that now I've kind of fallen out of love with the Fallout franchise. There's just so many of their games that I don't play. But I thought their presentation was outstanding. They had a great comedy bit halfway through the thing where they did this Skyrim Alexa thing. I thought that was very funny. It kind of lightened up the mood. I thought the Andrew WK thing, I love him, but I thought that was very weird to put that there. They started off, they had a great opening segments where they kind of showed the employees biking to work and stuff. That was cool. It was a cool, their stuff is very, very good. It's very popular. It's very polished. It was a good conference. I had more fun watching that than Microsoft.
Yeah. And you look at Bethesda's conference, and they had literally a little bit of everything. It was comedy, it was serious. They had the straight edge guys. Uh, they had the awkwardness. Obviously, some people aren't as comfortable speaking, and uh, with Rage 2, there was a little bit of an odd. It's funny to put the short guy with the tall guy, and then the tall guy is the one who is struggling with composure and actually presentation. I always find that to be funny because you always picture the tall people as being more confident. Not always the case. Um, but yeah, they had a real good mix, and I swear, Todd Howard, um, literally born for this type of work. He has such a command of the room, and he doesn't even act like it phases them at all. And if you're a public speaker, he is the guy that you want to emulate because he literally, anytime that he takes that stage, anytime that he talks about anything, I just want to watch him. I just want to watch him. And not every company is lucky enough to have that. And I think that Bethesda, they better keep Todd Howard as long as they possibly can, because he's just really the face of that company. He's epitomizes exactly what you want to happen at any kind of an E3 type conference. Um, it was a Bethesda show. I didn't come away super excited about their games, but I did come away thinking what they did show me was nice. It was good, and while I liked Microsoft's conference and I thought they offered a lot, um, I kind of put them on the same level, Bethesda and Microsoft, um, despite the fact that Microsoft had so much more. Um, but with that, we're going to actually be wrapping up this show. Ryan, do you have any final thoughts before we actually hit the road?
No, it was good. I mean, I'm looking forward to Sony.
All right, excellent. You can find him on Twitter at Ryan Hamner and also at GameBlock.com. Don't forget the hyphen, GameBlock.com. And you can find me on Twitter as well at TunesBrian. That's at TOONSBRIAN. Also at oneup.club. That's one-up.club and not .com because that's completely different. It's actually kind of an archive site. But be sure to do that. Let us know what you thought about both conferences, Microsoft and Bethesda. In the next couple of days, we're going to be covering all the conferences that are coming up. Tomorrow's Sony's day. Also, yeah. I'm so tired. Devolver is actually probably over at this point, I would imagine. So we'll actually cover that a little bit tomorrow. I might do something in the morning for that. So be sure to check those out. We will actually be producing this a little bit more and putting it out there. So if you've been with us the past day or so, couple of days, we are trying this. This is all new to us, to both Ryan and myself. Um, we're trying to work out all the production stuff, and I thank you for putting up with that right now. So on behalf of Ryan and myself, we will talk to you tomorrow. You have a great day.